Hi there folks, back again for another video. Yes, I was away last weekend, but that's because I was moving a lot of boxes around. So unfortunately, it meant that I wasn't able to get a video out, despite my best efforts. But back again, and because of Dragons is going to be firing on all cylinders once more, so we're going to get a video every week now, which is good. But I thought I would dive in and have a little bit of a chat about what kind of stuff I've been thinking about doing lately. As you can see on screen, it's not Middle-earth related. Bam, bam, bam. Although there is Middle-earth stuff happening, just to prove it, you know, I've not fully gone off the boil. There is an Ent. There is a Treebeard being worked on, as well as a Gildor Inglorian. And I was also able to pick up some nice stuff from Warhammer Fest this weekend as well. So I picked up Glorfindel and also the Defenders of Helm Deep as well, which was kind of cool. But the focus of this episode is going to be, it's mainly Arbitorian's fault, really. So I'm going to have this video linked down below, so you can go and check it out. But for their latest Tale of Four Gamers, the folks that are good buddies with Arbitorian are going to be diving in and putting together new warbands for use in Warcry. And I thought this was a pretty good opportunity to dive in and, you know, well, pull my finger out essentially and actually start working on some Warcry stuff for myself. Because me and my friend Sean have also been looking at Warcry as well. I think it sounds like a really cool idea. And especially with the news that we've had over the last day or so from Warhammer Fest, it seems like a decent time to dive in and start looking at Warcry as an option. So one of the nice things about this, and they go through it as they're talking in the video, is that Warcry is a very simple and easy game to dive into that actually has a lot of really cool mechanics to it. It's very simple and easy to learn. Seems decidedly easier than looking at something like Kill Team, which I think is kind of cool. Obviously, you can go and watch the full video for yourself when you go over onto Arbitorian's channel. And so for that reason, it seems to be a great opportunity to dive into exploring the world of Warcry and also, by extension, the world of Age of Sigmar without having to collect a huge, massive army. Now, one of the things that I actually have a lot of, because I bought the original box set and I've picked stuff up over the years as well, is I have a lot of Stormcast Eternals. Now, Stormcast Eternals haven't had their official box set yet, although they are coming. We'll see that in a second. It's on that tab. But interestingly, when looking at the core rules and the stuff for building warbands, all this is free, by the way. I'm not spoiling anything by doing this. You get to make a warband of 1,000 points. Okay, so as you can see here over on this side, you got to have a leader. You got to have a bunch of characters in there as well. Can't exceed 1,000 points. And then you split it up into different sections, and then you use that in your games as you play them. There's even some bits and pieces in the free core rules allowing you to put together your initial warbands and stuff like that. I might try and do kind of like a little demo-y sort of run through of Warcry and just have a little chat about the game in the future. I think that could be kind of cool. But just so to give you an idea, you only need to spend 1,000 points, and 1,000-point army can be as big as something like that, but it can be as low as 3, as you can see in the little description there. So if you're playing something like ogres, for example, that might end up with you having quite a lot of quite a few models and then a lot of noblars to fill in the gaps. But as well as making the core rules free, the folks at Games Workshop also made all of the faction stuff free as well. So you can go and start looking at making warbands and things using the existing stuff that's out there in the wild. Now, this is the one that covers the Stormcast Eternals, and it covers some of the different chambers. So you've got the Thunderstrike Stormcast, which are your new ones. So they're the ones that you would have got in the new box set. As they kind of pushed out into the heart of Gur and stuff like that. We've got the Sacrosanct Chamber, which was the one from the Souls Wars kind of storyline. So that's your kind of mystics and priests and all that kind of stuff. You've got your Vanguard as well. So these are your Rangers and Neve Black Talon and that kind of stuff, which I think is kind of cool. So if you wanted to throw in Neve Black Talon, you can indeed run her, which is kind of awesome, as you can see there. Especially with the new animation out, you could even recreate some of those fights, which would be kind of cool. And then you've also got the Warrior Chamber. So this is your classic chamber that you will have seen when the first edition came out, which is absolutely jam-packed full of various Stormcast Eternals, because Stormcast Eternals are like Space Marines in that there are a billion releases for them and very little for anyone else. But anyway, because I was able to pick up the Warrior set, which is the smallest of the sets for Warhammer Age of Sigmar in the new edition. It comes with a Knight Arcanum, which is that one there, alongside a set of Vindictors. So they're your classic sort of spearmen that you use as your kind of baseline troops if you're making a Thunderstrike army, I suppose. Well, because I had access to all of those, I thought, well, let's see if I can actually make a warband out of that. And so I went to and dived in, and I sort of put together this. So this was my initial idea for a warband. I was going to use a lot of the stuff that I had sort of lying around. So I really like the idea of Night Questors. I think they're a really cool concept. So in Age of Sigmar, the Night Questors are the ones that have been given a like mighty quest by Sigmar, and they have to go out and fulfill it, and then they come back and they get another one and all that kind of stuff. So they're kind of like wandering knights, which I think is really awesome. And the Lord Relictors, the Relictors are always cool. They're the kind of like chaplains of the Stormcast Eternals, essentially. So having them in there is kind of awesome as well. And then I basically just went through and picked out a few different things that I thought was kind of cool. I've obviously gone over by 5 points, but if you're playing with friends, who's counting, I guess. But it was kind of giving me a few interesting ideas and things like that. But then I was thinking to myself, but I do, all of that stuff I might have to strip and repaint and stuff like that if I want to bring it into my scheme, which I'll get to in a second. So I thought I'd have a look at what I had from the Warrior box. And the Warrior box, as I say, comes with the Knight Arcanum, 5 Vindictors. But it doesn't come with a Gryph-hound, but that kind of caps things off nicely to a 995 points, which gets me up to 1,000, which is pretty awesome. I do have a Gryph-hound, but it's the old little small plastic one that came alongside the War Priest of Sigmar that you've got in Silver Tower. But I kind of want to get a new one, but we'll talk about that in a second as well. But yeah, so this seemed like a pretty good opportunity to dive in and have a hero and some miniatures. So let's just, build the warband and maybe play some games. And so having a look through stuff like that, I'd put together all of the lists and things. And so going back to this, here is what I've been attempting to do. So one of the things that I really like about Age of Sigmar, you can see Gildor and Glorian in the back there, and some hobbits. Bum, bum, bum. Is that you get the chance to play around with some really interesting concepts in Age of Sigmar. So a lot of people see it as this like massively high fantasy style game, and it is to a point. There are lots of high fantasy elements in there, or epic fantasy elements in there, which include like big bombastic, mages and magic abilities and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I really like about it is that you can start to see more of the stories being told that have got that kind of grim and perilous feel to them. So a little bit more of that grimdark is seeping through. And I can't think of anything more grimdark currently. I mean, there are some grimdark stuff. Ulf and Khan, for example, and the Cursity. But Stormcast Eternals, man. Stormcast Eternals are these legendary warriors that were, or heroic warriors that were plucked from the moment of death and then thrust back into battle, reforged as these mighty, muscle-bound warriors. And every single time they die, they are reforged and they fight again, more often than not. And every single time they go through that reforging process, they get a little bit different, they get a little bit weirder. Sometimes they come back with some more memories that they didn't know they had, or they lose their memories and all that kind of stuff. But all of them are kind of like forced to fight constantly by Sigmar in this sort of eternal war for the mortal realms. And so I thought, this seems like the prime opportunity to do some kind of grim dark stuff for Age of Sigmar. And I think I've done a video about this where I talked about the paint schemes and things but that I've gone through for these. But so that's what I wanted to go for the scheme with this, and I think it's actually turning out kind of awesome. So this is the Knight Arcanum that I've painted up. It's very, very simple sort of scheme. It's dry brushed with lead belcher, and then bought up with that lovely sort of off gold that you get from Games Workshop, which the name continually escapes me, but I absolutely love it because it can be used as like bronze or gold or whatever. And then I do a couple of the additional details, so I do things like the cloaks and I do the scrolls and everything like that. It's all base coat layers that you'd normally do when you're painting. But then the fun part comes in when you get to do all the grimmy darky stuff. So they are just then saturated essentially in Agrax Earthshade. And then I work in some Reichland Flesh Shade here and there, do a little bit of Nuln Oil, and just play around with the washes to try and make it look like it's dirty and grimy and horrible and all that kind of good stuff. Then I go back in and I do a few highlights. So I'm very select with my highlights with these guys because I kind of like the idea that they're sort of dark and gritty and muddy. So I go back in and I use the Ideneth Deepkin flesh tones for their skin, because I love the idea that they've just kind of like, because they're in their armor most of the time, is they've kind of gone pale and a little bit pallid, and there's something a little bit strange and sometimes uncanny about them. So that's kind of why I went with that skin tone. It also works as a really nice kind of like point of difference and point of light, I think, to draw the eye towards the models. And then in the cases where I'm playing around with something which is magical, for example with the Knight Arcanum, I then go in and just do the most basic of object source lighting. So, you know, you can achieve OSL with like blends and all that kind of good stuff, or you can load your dry brush up and you can kind of like dry brush on the OSL. So I kind of try and give her like a glowing orb or a file there that maybe has some kind of magical juice in it, and then of course her like sigil is kind of glowing as well, that she's using to channel her magical powers. And I kind of went through it, and you've got to be a little bit brave with this, but I kind of went through and just did a little bit of additional sort of work on some of the areas where the glow would go and all that kind of thing. And I think it's subtle, but I think it works. And then I just basically went through and did the same thing with a bunch of my core troops as well. So these are all the Vindictors. So I've got, that's your Vindictor Prime there. Again, going with that kind of classic. In the old days, it would kind of like be bolt gun metal, I suppose, and kind of like, you know, like a Chaos Dwarf brass, I suppose. And I just think it looks really cool. And then the basing's really simple. It's just Sterling mud that is then dry brushed up. And never be afraid to get mud up the greaves and all that kind of stuff as well, because that's kind of what makes these look, you know, gives them that extra grimdarky feel to them, which I think is kind of cool. You can stats them in their sort of mostly finished state. Yeah, there you go. You can have a look at the back of the model as well there, which I think is kind of cool. Yeah, and obviously they've got kind of like this rusted kind of Eternal Warrior feel to them, which I think is kind of awesome. Here's one of the models that I was working on this week. So I did a little bit of a hangout and paint with some of my friends, and I was working on the Warband then. So this is them at one of the earlier stages. So this is them before the dry brush on the base to bring that back out, and then the black rimming. There you go. So yeah. This was just going in with the washes and stuff like that, and there's the highlighting up of the face and getting the black hair back in and that kind of thing as well. And there's another one of the helmeted gentleman, looking kind of cool. But as I said, I'd kind of done this stuff previously, so this is the Warhammer Underworld's Shadespire Warband that first came out when that game was launched, and this was one of my more bloody grimdark options. But obviously, I mean, they used to put rules in to Warcry for using the Underworld's warbands as kind of like mighty heroes in your gangs and stuff. They haven't looked to have put that in currently, from what I can see. But, you know, this is essentially just a Liberator with a Great Hammer. So instead of using them as the characters from the Warband, you could obviously just throw them in as the individual units that you get in Age of Sigmar. So if I wanted to expand things out or build another Warband, I have that option to go down that route, which I think is kind of cool. There's one with the twin blades. And again, throwing a little bit of blood for the blood god into the mix. I really liked what I did with Oberon's hammer there, where he's clearly just absolutely smushed something. And then there's still the light of Sigmar somewhere within the realms there, glowing from that statue. I thought it was kind of cool. But yeah, lots of blood up the cape and the cloak and all that kind of stuff as well. You got to do that, I think. But yeah, and I think it worked out as kind of a really nice scheme in the grand scheme, of things. I think it's came together really nicely. And it's a very quick and easy scheme as well, that I think as long as everything is tied into the same aesthetic, you get the sense of what you're trying to do as a project. If there was only a couple of the models that were done in this style and then everything else was very different, I think it would be really weird, especially if you did that with like characters or whatever. But I think with this, blending everything together in this sense creates a very coherent, interesting story and the way you want to tell it. This was the kind of like main hero character that you've got in the Underworlds box set. Painted him up again in that kind of style with that kind of vampiric face and things like that. This was before I'd kind of got a little bit better with the with pulling out the details, but also I was doing a paint over with this. I didn't strip the model, I just painted over the top, and so obviously there's a little bit of a kind of like it doesn't look quite right because obviously there's layers of other paint underneath and that kind of thing. I probably should have stripped him before I did it, but there we go. But yeah. And a few more of the models there, as you can see. So there's some more of them. There's Oberon. There's Angrad, Bright Shield there, looking pretty badass. Just essentially just a liberated if you really needed it to be. I think it's kind of cool. But I also wanted to show off that I'd actually done some of the work on. I'd done the similar styles on some of the other models as well. So this was my kind of like Grimdark Chaos kind of design that I went for, and I think it turned out kind of cool. I kind of like the pinky purple skin, which kind of goes with that idea of almost it being kind of infected and horrible and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so Grimdark is definitely the way that I'm going to go with this, and I think it should turn out really, really nicely. Now, the thing that was really interesting is obviously over this week we had the news of a new box set coming out. So this is Nightmare Quest for Warcry, and funnily enough, it seems to have fitted straight into my wheelhouse of what I was trying to do, because they're going up against some ghouls. So this is the new Night Questor style warband that is going to be kicking ass and taking names. So this is a sort of band of different Stormcast who might be who have been tasked by Sigmar to go out and destroy something out in the darkness of the mortal realms. And you've got a whole host of different looking characters here they're obviously going to make up their own warband, which I think is kind of cool, but you could use them for something else as well. This guy, the kind of like Questor Relictor chap, I think is just amazing, and he's definitely getting added to my warbands. But the thing that was kind of interesting is that I was obviously making up this Warcry warband to play, and obviously at that point everything is technically free because I've already had the models, so it was easy. But I'm really tempted to pick up this warband as well because I think it could be absolutely awesome. It comes in this new starter set, which is Nightmare Quest, which I think is really cool. You also get the ghouls on the other side. I really like this kind of Strigoi old style vampire lord. Or mistress, however you want to go with it, I suppose, that has been added into the mix. And there's some really nice crypt ghouls and stuff that they come in the set. You can see them there. I think they just look amazing. It'll be really, really fun to paint, and especially going with that grimdark style. I think it'd be very quick and easy to build things together. I'm not such a fan of these hounds. I think they look a little bit derpy. They're kind of like dogmen, I suppose. I mean, I think, they're okay, but I just don't think they're anything really on everything else. And obviously, if I picked up this set, I'd get my hands on the Ziggurat, the Realm Shaper engine, as you can see there, and some more of the terrain. And this would obviously then allow me to play games straight out of the box with some Stormcast Eternals. And I could either go with these guys, or I could go with my other warband, and I think it could be kind of cool. But yeah. So I'm kind of tempted to pick those up and dive in and have some fun with that game, I think. The thing that's been kind of putting me off, though, is that obviously we're getting Nightmare Quest, which is coming out relatively soon, if spring, so it's, the next couple of months, maybe sort of May time. end of May. But then as we move into summer, we're getting a new starter set, and they tend to put in older warbands and stuff like that. Now, obviously, this seems like a really cool idea, but this would come with everything else that you'd want to actually start playing if you were a new person, rather than having to use the rules online and stuff like that. So I'm kind of umming and ahhing. I have a warband currently, and it's a Stormcast Eternal warband that I've made. It might not necessarily be the greatest one, but I have it. So I could wait for the starter set and pick that up and see what they do with that, or I could just get Nightmare Quest and have a whole bunch of stuff that I need, but then have to keep referring to things online and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of a kind of topsy-turvy thing at the moment, but we'll see where it goes, I suppose. In the grand scheme of things, though, Warcry is really kind of open and interesting and has some really fun skirmish elements to it. So I'm really interested to dive in and see where it goes. And I can't wait to try out my Grimdark paint scheme on some more models. Just to give you an idea, there's some really cool models that would really definitely fit into what I'm trying to do. So you've got the Knight Relictor there, who is a Thunderstrike hero for use in your armies. Not like the Relictor Prime or the Relictor Lord that we got in the original set, which is still an amazing model with his big kind of relic case and stuff. But a badass model nonetheless, looking very cool. These are probably some of the Gryph-hounds that I'm going to get, so I'm going to see if I can kind of source maybe 1 or 2 Gryph-hounds rather than having to buy the entire pack, but that'll be my Gryph-hound that'll get thrown into the mix. And then one of the other things that I actually have access to is the Rivals of Harrowdeep set. So again, if they put in the hero characters, then obviously these are going to be great for this, because I could just fold them into the warband. But if not, I could just use this as a Judicator, a chap with a Grand Hammer, and a named character with a sword, essentially, in my warband, and just come up with some fun story. And then there's an Aether Wing in there as well, which comes with some of the different warbands as well. So I have those models that I'm going to be working on as well at the same time, doing that same kind of grimdark paint scheme for the models, which I think could be kind of cool, kind of fun, kind of interesting. But yeah. Warcry seems to be the thing for me at the moment. I like how easy and fun it is to paint, and it'll be really interesting to see where I can go with this and what I can do with it, and where it all comes together. As I said, make sure to go and check out the Tale of 4 Warcry Gamers episode 1. I think episode 2 is coming out fairly soon as well, according to Ian. I think it's next week, or maybe it's just after that. So definitely go and watch that and see what you think, and maybe join in. I believe if you are part of their Patreon, you can share your images with the rest of the folks there. So that's Gary, Russ, and Bobby as well. And if you share your stuff as part of a Patreon, then they will go through the warbands and things like that, I think, which would be kind of cool. But otherwise, I'm gonna be sticking them on Twitter and blaming Ian Arbitorian for all of my woes as I go through building up a Warcry warband of my own. I've been drawn away from Middle Earth, god damn it, but there we go. By the God King. But yeah, so it should be really fun diving into this and giving it a go. Hopefully I'll put together some more stuff as I get towards the finish line with these models. I don't particularly have a dedicated hobby space just yet. I have lots of room to show off all my roleplay books and stuff, as you can see behind me, but I need a little bit of a space to do some painting and that kind of thing, without just hogging the dining room table from my girlfriend. So yeah, I'm going to be diving in and doing a little bit more of this, and I'll get back to you more stuff in the near future. Also want to talk about some Middle Earth stuff as well next week, I think. I have some ideas that I want to go through and sort of talk about the news that we've got and where we're going to go from there. And obviously we're going to have Old World news today. You'll have seen it by the time this goes out, essentially. And yeah, it'll be fun to see where they go with that, and I'll have a chat about that as well in the future, because I do love a little bit of old school Warhammer. But yeah, if you are interested in Warcry, if you have given it a go, if you've enjoyed the game, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of my Grimdark scheme and all that kind of good stuff. You're going to be trying something similar yourself, or have you done something similar yourself? And yeah, we'll be diving in and having a little bit more fun with Warhammery goodness in the next couple of weeks, I think. Make sure to do all the good stuff, like, share, comment, subscribe, everything else that you'd tend to do on a YouTube video. There is also a Ko-fi link down below, so if you like what I do and you want to donate some additional moolah to help me with the hobby, or indeed just buy a cup of tea, then you can do. That'll be really fun. But you don't have to do that. The most important thing is commenting and sharing and liking and that kind of good stuff, because it helps with the algorithm. And I just love talking to you folks about what you're getting up to and what you're doing. Very cool stuff. I will be back with another video next week. Tell me what you're up to. Tell me what you're hobbying on. Tell me if you're playing Warcry, and if so, which warband have you picked. I'm going to be moving on to another video, getting stuck into more stuff, and I will see you next week. Bye.